Okay, this video is a response to a couple of videos, actually, some on the free will subject and some recent one on, from the I love Ron Paul, or I want to have Ron Paul's baby, or whatever his name is, the kid. He's a nice kid. But anyway, yeah, death penalty, I really didn't think through the subject much when I spoke. I was merely reacting to first Fake Sagan's just this horrible comparison of the state going out with a crowbar and beating people to death. I mean, that was just so overdone. And I hate people that don't make any distinction about how, or like, method doesn't matter. Like, it just doesn't matter how something dies. And that's just nonsense. It's a huge difference. I mean, for many of us, many people, we do believe there are fates worse than death, and suffering is a fate worse than death in some cases. And certainly we shouldn't impose it pointlessly. So, so any inconsistency with my position that, we shouldn't be imposing suffering without a purpose to it, without some obvious or connected good, and the good would be the prevention of suffering. Yeah, I think I can remain consistent, and I just use some sloppy language. And then, on the confession point, yeah, that was sort of the wrong way. I knew when I said it, I said, well, that just screws up the whole, you want to encourage confessions, you don't want to discourage them. So I knew that was a little bit, I knew that was a shaky statement. And I should have clarified it because what I was thinking about at the time was the idea that, we go to all this trouble to take all the mirrors and the glass and belts off of these people. We do all this trouble to stop people from committing suicide when they're in jail, and it's just so stupid. We should be putting the bottle of instant death right there in their cell with them, because if somebody's going to save us the trouble, great, please do. So that's sort of what I'm talking about. I mean, if somebody wants to die, we should let them do it, especially people even accused of horrible, heinous crime. Just, expedite the whole process here. No harm, no foul, simple solution. And so I'm just saying that's sort of the direction I was heading in, is that there's a pretext of forcing people, we got to keep them alive so we can try them, so we can hang them. It just sort of doesn't make sense. So anyway, so accountability, so that's it for the death penalty part, I think. There might be some related part here, but, just in case that's all you're interested in. It's to the part of accountability and a deterministic will on the world. I mean, if everybody's gets the out of, yeah, well, my brain made me do it, and that's basically the excuse. Yeah, I mean, in theory, it's true, and then it's also in theory, when you commit a crime, the damage is done. You can't undo the damage. That's the nature of it. It's not something you can repair or fix or take away. And so, in a sense, the punishment for the crime is in the crime itself. If we are the community, it's all how we look at ourselves. I mean, we can look at ourselves as being white, or we can look at ourselves as being human, or we can look at ourselves as being part of the community of feeling creatures on planet Earth. And depending on how wide your scope is, I mean, the crime is against ourselves, in the sense that anytime you create suffering and hardship, you're torturing things that are equal to yourself, or have it. The suffering you create is manifestly valuable, and by destroying it, it's a negative. It's a crime against, like I said, it's a crime against your own productivity. So, obviously, punishment for just the sake of it, just to teach the asshole a lesson, wouldn't make much sense. It'd make us feel better, but there's no value in it, because we're just creating more suffering to pile onto the suffering already created. And but by the same token, there's, you know, we have this the out would be is the social necessity of creating deterrence against bad behavior. So that does give us some cause to create a punishment, to create a deterrence. And so that's an excuse, you know, to go here, to go to look at what you do to people who commit crimes, to make it unpleasant enough to deter them from committing crime. But even in that context, like I said, some people can argue there's not much deterrence value, and even if there was no deterrent value, if I conceded there was no way to deter crime by punishing criminals, I guess I could still make an argument for accountability. And I would make it the same way you would make it for, say, a toaster or anything you owned. It has to measure up to a certain minimum requirement of performance. And if it's not performing, you don't sit there and invest in it. You don't spend 10 times its value, its replacement cost, to fix it. And so in the context where a human life, you know, even though each one is unique, I mean, they're abundant. You can buy a human life on the open market for, you know, dollars, you know, pennies in some cases. You know, you can, a year's salary in Africa might be $100. You know, and that might feed a family of 4. I mean, it's just, it's, you know, there's just no, in that context, in a context where there's so many good toasters that are going to die for a lack of concern or care foring, the idea of maintaining a broken toaster in a cell somewhere for 50 years and giving him a life, because obviously you can't torture him, you can't make him really suffer, because that would just be pointless and cruel. So you have to give him a life and give him cable TV and give him other people to interact with, and you have to pay a bunch of guards to watch him, and some of those guards will get killed by these people, creating more of a price to maintain him. So that would be my argument for accountability, would just be that there's accountability is in the logic that if your brain is not functioning properly, if it is not behaving the rule, you know, if it's not performing as it needs to perform, then yeah, there's cause to get rid of it, to not invest in it, to not give it the privilege. And so I guess that would sort of be the argument, is that once you find out it's defective, you have a right or a responsibility to prevent that defectiveness from being defective some more, you know? And just as a logical thing, I mean, even if it wasn't deterrent, it would be prevention, because the thing has proven itself broken. And so I guess that would be my sort of my argument to Pyro, is that we still have accountability for the fact that if we're incredibly stupid and incredibly dumb and incredibly broken in our logical process, there still can be accountability for the fact that yes, you are dysfunctional. You can still be labeled dysfunctional, and you can be put out of service, so to speak, because of the dysfunction. And like I said, in the context where life is so cheap, there really is a responsibility not to waste a huge amount of resources to try to fix or make functional the dysfunctional. I mean, how much are you willing to spend on broken people, stupid people? And I guess I'd make the argument that most people that commit crimes and do other things, I mean, they're trespassing on such basic logic. I mean, they're lying, you know, they're selfish, they're egomaniacs. There are a lot of things that are just, it doesn't take a huge amount of education or even exposure to reality to understand right and wrong. It really doesn't. And so something that could, you know, live to be 20 years old, that can't figure out that it's, you know, I shouldn't, you know, kill people to steal their car. I shouldn't, you know, push old ladies into traffic, or whatever people are, you know, all this bullshit that people do. Yeah, they're just so broken. Why mess with it? Why invest in it? Why take care of it? Why do any of it when you can just spend, you know, you could spend the same resources and save or allow perfectly functional human beings to live with the same resources you're going to waste managing these broken things. So that's basically the argument. Like I said, having a deterministic view doesn't eliminate accountability, because we're still accountable for the fact that, you know, we have, whether it's we use the word allow or whatever, just the fact that our programming has gotten broken. I mean, I would say the fact that we do see it, we do watch it rotate through us, that anybody who, you know, can't see their own evil, you know, like I said, that's a blindness that's just, it just ruins the functionality of the human being.